First impressions are everything. We all know that if you buy a new game, your mind is made up pretty fast on if it's for you or it's not. It's no secret if you watch any of my content that none of these WoW expansions are new to me. Over the past year or so, alongside Wrath of the Lich King and Season of Discovery, I've leveled every single class to level 85 and raided on all of them up to Dragon Soul. But quite honestly, not really including much Dragon Soul, because while I can do tier 11 and tier 12 to death and still not get bored, tier 13 being Dragon Soul is one I would be extremely worried about getting bored of quickly when it releases in its classic capacity, so 1 or 2 clears was enough. Now, with the classic beta for Cataclysm being out, I've been sinking in some serious amounts of hours and genuinely going out of my way to completely finish every zone that I quest in, then basically starting a new character and doing a completely different set of zones to finish those to completion as well. Basically so I can report every single bug I find, and actually, whilst there's been quite a few bugs, some really big, from losing your main ability when you respec, losing your pet bar and having to log in and out several times before it comes back, all the way to quests in Outland and Northrend, which are exactly the same as they are in Wrath of the Lich King, but they're just not completable. It is to be expected though, that's why it's a beta, and on the basis that almost every single quest in Eastern Kingdoms and Kalimdor has been changed in one way, shape or form, they've been surprisingly bug-free on the most part. Before we go any further, if you use Rested XP and aren't aware, the pre-orders for the Cataclysm guides are now available in the pinned comment and the description. It is an affiliate link, so every guide you buy will go to supporting the channel. Remember, your current guide for the old zones won't work due to the complete rework of the questing system, so might be worth picking one up. Now, one of the things that I was surprised at personally was with no increased XP, no heirlooms, and just being dumped in the world poor and bagless, was actually how much harder it felt to quest on Cataclysm than it does on Season of Discovery, or even Wrath of the Lich King, to be fair. There appears to be a bug at the moment, or at least it feels bugged to me, with the health and mana regen at lower levels, and I've even had people complaining on stream or in Discord about energy regeneration as well. It does feel extremely low, and having to have massive amounts of downtime depending on your class, it kind of sucks a little bit. Obviously, once you get to level 10, every class gets one of 3 pretty big abilities, which starts to turn things around, providing they work. But it was actually a bit of a shock to the system leveling early on in the beta with how slow it felt to me. My options of leveling was also quite limited before any bug fixes went out, because leveling as a mage, I was pretty much restricted to leveling as arcane. The pet bar just didn't appear 9 times out of 10, making it kind of frustrating to level as frost. And when you go fire, hot streak wasn't working at all, so you could never get the instant cast pyroblast, which is really the reason you play fire. Since then though, the pet bar issue seems to have been fixed, and I haven't actually been back to fire to test hot streak, but I have been playing as frost and I've had 0 pet issues at all. As someone who is massively excited for Cataclysm, I do have some gripes with the game, and while they won't be relevant for the majority of us going from Wrath into Cataclysm, it does affect brand new players. I find the level you get certain abilities to just feel really odd. It could be things from a feral not having rip until level 54, or even most buffs not being available until much higher level as well, and the one that I find more weird than anything is waiting until your mid-30s as a mage before you can even start conjuring food and water. I could sit here all day and say every ability versus the level that they're required that I find a bit weird, but overall, I think it's going to come down to what class you play as to whether it will have much of an effect on you. Talking to Crix recently in a podcast with him and Scottejaye, he said Warlock felt fine except for the fact that you could get everything you want early and then almost nothing at later levels. And that is another minor criticism. There's lots of times when you'll get multiple levels without getting any ability whatsoever, and obviously you only get 1 talent point now every 2 levels. So when you're leveling up, it can kind of feel a little bit less exciting if you've got big gaps between getting new abilities. Now, what does make up for it though is the new talent system, and while I know it gets a lot of flack and people are like, I hate the new talent system, I do think they get that confused with the talent system that comes with Mr. Pandaria, not actually Cataclysm, because the Cataclysm talents go back to a more vanilla style size. All that's happened is important talents are left in the trees, and the really boring talents like 5 points for 5% crit just don't exist anymore. So what that means is every talent point really does feel like a hard decision, because every point that you put in feels like it actually has an impact just from that 1 point. One big shame at the moment on the beta as well is random dungeon finder isn't working. I Completely understand why, because they want to keep people out testing the quests, but you can go and do dungeons, obviously, but you have to manually make the group and run. An amazing thing about Cata, though, when it comes to dungeons, is the fact that the quests are at the start of the dungeon, so they're at the entrance. So running around questing in zones while you're queued into random dungeon finder just feels better now, because you know you haven't got to worry about doing pre-quests or you're going to queue into a dungeon that you've got no chance of having any quests for anyway. Although there still are restrictions where Horde can't get quests in Alliance dungeons and Alliance can't get quests in Horde dungeons. That still applies. Now, for me personally, I have actually been questing in zones that I've either not done for a really long time, or I've just not done at all. Because all through original Cata and other places I play Cata, I always go Alliance. So actually leveling Horde this time round has been really refreshing, because visiting zones like Thousand Needles and getting my own boat, or even the really epic quest lines in Stone Talon, up until it bugged and I had to leave, they've been a real treat. I've always been very vocal about how I hate water-related zones, or even water-related raids like SSC. I mean, Vashir as a leveling zone is a prime example, but I really enjoyed Thousand Needles. I think it probably was because I got my own boat and I've never done that zone before. Like, literally, I don't remember any of it. So some of these zones you really should look forward to doing, because they are just so different, yet still feel so similar. So even when it comes to like Strangleform Vow, running around and doing all the Hemet Nesingwary quests where you're killing all the beasts and then you're killing the harder beasts and then you're finally doing the boss beast at the end, you've no longer got the inconvenience of constantly running backwards and forwards to Hemet or his little camp. You just get a pop-up that shows you, well done, you've completed the quest, on to the next one. So I know they are more, I don't know, you're going to say retail kind of conveniences, but they just make the questing feel so much more enjoyable. But outside of questing, I am looking forward to more and more content opening on the beta to test, and will of course report back to you guys and girls. But at the moment, outside of questing, there ain't too much to do or test, but I'm sure it won't be long until 80 to 85 opens, so we can then get into dungeons and heroics, which is going to be a ton of fun. So I need to keep slogging away and leveling as many of these classes up as possible, ready for when all of that content becomes available. If you want to join me for a few beers on stream while I'm leveling, I stream over on kick.com/Scottejaye. Far too much at the moment, and I don't see it changing anytime soon, so I'll see you there. And that's really just my first impressions of the beta. The things that I like, the things that I don't like, with the stuff that we've got to test. Now, I know some of you won't like any of it. Some of you will have no plans on playing Cataclysm whatsoever, but if you happen to get in the beta, which there was a huge wave that went out, so if you did sign up, check your launcher. There's a good chance you've probably got an invite. Get on, try the leveling, see what you think, because honestly, I've had an absolute blast leveling my mage and so far my paladin, and I can't wait to do at least another 4 or 5 characters before I just can't do any more leveling on the beta and I need to wait for the pre-patch. But be sure to like and subscribe, consider joining the channel as a member, and I'll see you on the next one.